Before we begin, viewer discretion is strongly advised. The following is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim federal courtroom. Testimony of the Sean Diddy Combs. Trial as reported by Inner City Press. In a shocking twist no one saw. Coming, Wendy Williams, the queen of hot topics, the one they tried to silence, has now taken the stand in federal court. After decades of rumors, suspicions, and relentless industry backlash, Wendy is finally putting it all on record. Her testimony isn't just about Diddy. It's about a pattern of protection, silence, and systemic abuse in hip-hop and entertainment. From Jay-Z to R. Kelly, from radio blackballing to NDAs, Wendy came armed with dates, quotes, and chilling recollections. This wasn't a tabloid segment. This was a bombshell deposition under oath with everyone listening. What she said about Diddy, Jay-Z, and their twisted connection, it could tear down an entire industry. Buckle up, because Wendy Williams just turned the courtroom into her purple chair. When Wendy Williams entered the courtroom, it didn't feel like a celebrity appearance. It felt like the arrival of someone who had been buried alive and clawed her way out just to finally tell the truth. She wasn't here for headlines. She wasn't here for drama. She was here because for years, the media tried to silence her with lawsuits, threats, blackballing, and mockery. And now, all those warnings, all those rumors she put out on her old radio show were part of a federal investigation. She sat down, looked directly at the jury, and adjusted her microphone with a calm but deliberate pace. I was never messy. I was never bitter. I was never lying. I was early. Wendy wasted no time reminding the court why she was there to testify under oath about the behaviors, threats, cover-ups, and patterns she had long accused Sean Diddy Combs of orchestrating. When I first started talking about Diddy, she said, I wasn't trying to tear him down. I was trying to wake people up. The courtroom watched as she placed a stack of papers in front of her. Printouts of old show transcripts, emails from executives, and a timeline of everything Diddy allegedly did to shut her down. She started in the early 2000s. He was protected. Everybody knew it. You couldn't talk about Puff without a phone call coming in an hour later. She detailed moments where then station managers warned her. Advertisers pulled out of her show. Threats were made. Subtle but unmistakable. You're doing too much, Wendy. They'd say, you're going to get hurt, Wendy. She described being chased, quite literally, out of her radio, stationed by a girl group, allegedly sent by Diddy himself. Total. I said they were broke, as she recalled, and within hours they were waiting for me outside my building. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. Wendy described her career like it was a war zone. Every time I exposed something about Diddy, from his parties to the way he treated his artists, something in my world would collapse. A sponsor, a syndication deal, a network invite, gone. But she refused to back down. You can blackball me. You can threaten me. But you can't erase me. And now I'm under oath. So I hope they're listening because I'm not stopping until the truth is loud enough to shut their machine down. When the prosecution asked Wendy about the culture surrounding Diddy, she pivoted towards someone else she had long warned the public about. Jay-Z. Her tone sharpened. You can't talk about what Diddy did without talking about the people who stood next to him, smiled with him while the abuse was happening. That includes Jay-Z. Wendy's eyes scanned the jury before she leaned in. Y'all remember Foxy Brown? She was 15. Jay-Z was 27. And he was everywhere with her. She pulled out lyrics from Foxy's debut album. Songs Jay-Z reportedly wrote, Ain't no nump like the one I got. No one can be better. She read aloud, deliberately. The courtroom recoiled. You tell me, she continued, why was a grown man writing those lyrics for a child? She continued with details only someone from the industry could know. Rumors of Jay picking Foxy up from high school, lavish gifts, shopping sprees, hair appointments, all funded by a man almost twice her age. This wasn't a label signing. This was grooming. Then Wendy dropped something even darker. An alleged tape. There was a rumor for years that a tape existed. Jay-Z, Foxy, and Jamie Foxx. You never heard about it again. Why? Because suddenly Foxy's home was burglarized. The tape? Gone. She let the words hang in the air. Coincidence? I think not. Wendy said she was fired from her top-rated radio show shortly after suggesting that Jay-Z's relationships with underage girls needed to be investigated. They called me toxic. But now you're seeing, everything I asked was worth asking. The prosecution then asked if she had any concrete evidence. Wendy nodded. Email call logs. Producers who backed out of my show when I brought up Jay's name. She told the court that Jay-Z's team made quiet calls to industry insiders to blacklist anyone who spoke about Foxy. They turned me into the villain, she said, just for asking what any decent person should have asked. Then she turned to the jury. You think I lost sponsors for being messy? No. I lost sponsors because I was right, and they couldn't let that spread. Next came what Wendy called the part nobody wanted to believe. The part that had her labeled as a liar, a loudmouth, And worse, I was the first to say it. Those weren't parties. They were operations. She was referring to the infamous freak-offs, a term now central to the federal indictment against Diddy. Wendy said she first heard whispers about these events in the late 90s, when Bad Boy was at its peak. Phones were taken at the door. Guests signed in at ease. There were candle escorts. Cameras. People were assigned to rooms. This wasn't a house party. It was a ritual, referenced Karen Superhead Stevens, who told Wendy on air that Diddy invited her to one of parties and asked for male involvement. Superhead didn't lie. She described everything. Diddy's paranoia, his drugs, the strange setups. He was afraid she'd expose him. Wendy leaned in again. And I made sure people heard that interview. I played it again and again because the truth was too heavy to let it pass. She described similar stories from other guests, men and women, who had been to, Diddy's parties and came back shaken. They didn't just party. They were told what to do, what to wear, who to touch, what room to go in. Wendy testified that she had personally spoken with 3 individuals who described IV bags being used to recover from the party, just like the court indictment now details. There were medical assistants on standby. This wasn't socializing. This was organized depravity. She produced a list, pseudonyms only, of people who'd given her their testimonies in private. The court was stunned, one by one. These events matched the very patterns described by Cassie Ventura, Gandil, and other witnesses in the case. Then Wendy dropped the line that hit everyone hard. The baby oil. I said it on air as a joke. But it wasn't funny. They really found over 1,000 bottles. Just like I said. You know why I knew? Because people told me. And I was the only one willing to say it. She sat back in the chair, composed, and looked over at Diddy all these years later. And we're finally here. Now it's not gossip. It's evidence. As the courtroom grew more silent, Wendy Williams shifted. Then she shifted focus to someone she had been defending for years. Cassie Ventura. I said it back then, she declared, her eyes never leaving the jury. Y'all were mesmerized by the diamonds, the music videos, the red carpets, but I saw a scared girl. I saw imbalance, and I said it on the air. Something about that relationship was off. Wendy testified that she had tried to warn her listeners as early as 2008 about the obsessive control Diddy allegedly had over Cassie. She was 19, he was pushing 40. That's not love, that's leverage. She explained how Diddy's empire, the jets, private security, industry pull, made it nearly impossible for Cassie to leave. I said it then, and I'll say it now. She didn't need a boyfriend. She needed a bodyguard. She reminded the courtroom of an old interview clip she'd aired. Cassie, looking down, flinching when Diddy raised his voice. People called it nerves. I called it trauma. But nobody listened. The prosecution entered into evidence a timeline of Wendy's broadcasts that eerily paralleled Cassie's legal claims. Was told Diddy had access to her phones, that he'd show up at hotels unannounced, that he'd get staff to unlock her doors. She paused, and when I said that out loud, my show sponsors pulled the plug. Then came the 2018 incident, the moment Cassie allegedly ended things after Diddy forced his way into her home. That's not the first time he showed up uninvited, Wendy testified. People don't understand. When a mogul wants control, they don't need permission. They make the world rearrange itself for them. She gave the court a chilling breakdown. He forced his way into her home. That's not the first time he showed up uninvited, Wendy testified. Then she delivered a chilling truth. People don't understand. When a mogul wants control, they don't need permission. They make the world rearrange itself for them. She gave the court a dark breakdown of how these mogul dynamics truly work. Grooming, isolating, leveraging industry power, and disguising. It all under the illusion of luxury as obedience. He didn't just love Cassie, he owned her. And when she broke the chain, she became dangerous. Wendy's voice slowed as she delivered the next blow. Everything in that lawsuit. I saw the signs. I said it publicly. And now she's finally being heard. But at what cost? She adjusted her mic. Her voice didn't tremble, but the weight behind it deepened. You don't get to talk about men like Diddy and walk away clean. I knew that, but I didn't realize how deep it would go. Until it happened. She testified that in 2004, when she was at the peak of her radio career, she received a message from a record label executive. Stop talking about Puff, or else. Wendy didn't flinch. She kept going, and the very next week, she was pulled from her afternoon time slot. They didn't even pretend it wasn't about him. It was punishment. Wendy said she later learned Diddy had made strategic calls to label heads, promoters, radio networks, all with one warning. Distance yourself from Wendy. She remembered one program director being brutally honest, went too far. You poked the wrong bear. And then came the physical threat. She recalled how she was nearly attacked outside her own studio by none other than the girl group Total. She had called them washed up and broke on air. And you think they just showed up randomly? Wendy asked. No, They were sent. She painted the moment vividly. Fans pressed to the glass of the radio station lobby. Her boyfriend waiting in the car. Her intern. Panicking. That wasn't just a confrontation, she said. That was a message. We can get to you. Then came the blackballing. She was disinvited from BET events. Denied media passes. Lost advertising deals. One after the other. It was all coordinated. Diddy didn't just want to stop me. He wanted to erase me. She held up printed emails from PR firms tied to bed. Boy records. Each one pulling away from her show. One read plainly. Per client instruction, we will no longer be booking talent on Wendy Williams' show. She looked at the jury, lifted the paper and said, That client? Sean Combs. Then she hit them with the truth. I wasn't the first to be blackballed, but I was one of the few who stayed loud about it. She leaned in again. That's what he does. If you speak, you lose everything. Your mic, your money, your name. But I didn't fold. I talked through the silence. And here I am. Wendy paused, quiet now, before dropping a memory that stunned the room. We come from a very homosexual era of hip-hop. She quoted her own words from years ago. That wasn't shade. That was truth. And for saying it, I was burned at the stake. She explained how in the early 2000s, a quiet but powerful movement was underway. One that protected certain stars by shaming anyone who questioned them. I had Charlemagne on the air with me. Even then, we knew what not to say if we wanted to keep our jobs. But I said it anyway. Anyway, she held up her 2004 book, The Wendy Williams Experience. It was full of coded references, veiled warnings. About Diddy, about Jay-Z. About the after-dark lifestyles y'all praised. But det tog påfest. People called it gossip back then. But now, the government calls it evidence. Then she brought up a 2009 interview. Former Bad Boy artist Mark Curry. He'd just released Dancing with the Devil. He called Diddy the shadow that ruins people. She paused. I agreed. And just like that interview disappeared from the radio station archives. She testified, every time I featured someone critical of this industry. Superhead, Gene Deal, Jaguar Right. I got pushback, emails, threats, even FCC complaints, and they tried to shut me down. Every way they could. Then she dropped a detail that locked the courtroom in place. There was a list. Not written down, but everyone in the industry knew it. A list of people you couldn't talk about. And when I broke that rule, I paid. Her Hot Topic segment, constantly flagged. Producers? Pressured. Talent reps? Calling in threats. Executives warned me off the record. Back off. You're going to mess it all up. For us. For the station. For yourself. She gave a soft, bitter pause. But now, it's all messed up anyway. Because the truth is out. Her voice dropped. This trial is not the beginning. It's the end of a cover-up. She looked directly at the jury. I've been sounding this alarm for 20 years. You all just finally heard it. Her tone sharpened like a blade. You think this is just about Diddy? She narrowed her eyes. You're wrong. This is about the ecosystem that protected him. And that includes names you were never supposed to hear in a courtroom. She looked straight ahead and dropped them. Tyler Perry. Oprah Winfrey. The courtroom froze. A collective stillness. And the prosecution leaned forward. They asked her to explain. And Wendy did. With brutal clarity. There's a list in Hollywood. Not one you'll ever see. Not one you'll ever hold. But it's real. A list of people you do not cross. And if you do, you disappear. She recounted the aftermath. After her radio segments, where she exposed more than just Diddy's parties, she named names. Tyler Perry, Oprah, and the industry retaliated. I had sources, producers, agents. They told me flat out, Wendy, your name is being passed around. They don't want you touching certain topics. You're being labeled unstable. Then came the turning point. Her fallout with the Precious Team. A film backed by both Perry and Oprah. I went from premieres to being wiped off the guest list. One executive told her plainly, Oprah's people don't want you near her anymore. That's power. And that power, it was used to protect people like Diddy. Then she dropped something cold. I confided in Oprah, privately, about my past trauma with abuse. Wendy said Oprah promised to never exploit it. Next thing I know, my abuser was on her show, being interviewed, while I was being blackballed. She didn't pause. That wasn't just betrayal. That was retaliation. The jury sat stunned. They smiled with him, took pictures. stood beside Diddy while we got crushed. For telling the truth. Why? Because they needed him. For deals. For reach. For silence. Then she revealed something even darker. An email accidentally forwarded to her from a PR firm handling crisis communication for both Perry's studio and a bad boy affiliated brand. Subject line: Managing Optics, Wendy Puff Tyler. That was all it said. But it was enough. Wendy stared straight ahead. These aren't just isolated stars. They're a machine. A machine that feeds on silence and destroys anyone who dares pull back the curtain. The courtroom was now tense. You could hear breath catching. Then came what prosecutors later called the turning point. Wendy reached under the table and pulled out a thick file folder. This, she said, tapping the cover, is a collection of NDA emails and internal memos that were never supposed to see the light of day. She clarified, no hacks, no stealing. These were sent to me by friends who left the industry behind. They were tired of watching women disappear, tired of watching truth get labeled gossip. Then she began to read. An NDA, dated 2007, name redacted, language chilling. Subject agrees not to disclose any private gatherings, recordings, or interactions with Sean Combs, his guests, or associates. Violation of this agreement may result in financial penalties and public retaliation. Retaliation. She slammed the paper down. Public retaliation. That's how deep it went. Then she read another email. This time from a luxury hotel chain. We have prepared the presidential suite with all requested amenities, including extra linens, candlelight lighting, and discretion measures. Mr. Combs' assistant will arrive for setup prior to guest entry. The date? 2015. Cassie was still with Diddy. Wendy stared forward. You think this was just celebrity partying? No. This was a system. Planned, funded, scheduled, and cleaned up. Then came the receipts. I have proof. Payments made to publicists, talent managers, even bloggers, all to manage the narrative. One email to a writer said, avoid reference to recent rumors. Instead, push a feature on Diddy's philanthropic work. Then came the photo. Presented to the jury. Diddy, Tyler Perry, a media consultant known for crisis sweep-ups, all smiling at a 2019 gala. Smiling, Wendy said, while women were paid to shut up, while others were destroyed for not signing. Then she dropped this. They offered me an NDA too. Said I could have a syndicated TV deal if I just moved on. She didn't. I said no, and I paid the price. The courtroom sat in silence. The silence they bought cost others their freedom, their peace, their truth. And now it's all unraveling, one NDA at a time. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She carried the weight of 2 decades of being ignored. Then calm and focused. You see Diddy on trial, she said. But I see something much bigger. She turned toward the defense table. This isn't just about what he did. It's about who let him do it. You see one man. I see a legacy of silence. A tower built on fear. NDAs. Power plays. Party invitations. And billion-dollar handshakes. Then to the jury. Every time someone tried to speak, that tower crushed them. She named names. Jay-Z, Tyler Perry, Oprah. They watched. They knew. Some saw the abuse firsthand. They shook his hand, took his checks, and shut the doors on anyone who asked questions. And then she found her voice again. That voice that once ruled radio. And I was called bitter. I was called crazy. But I was right. And I'd rather be right in hell than be silent in heaven. She looked Diddy dead in the eye. You thought I was gone. You thought your power was enough. But now, the truth caught up to you. And I hope it's loud. Then, one last glance toward the gallery. This trial is not the end. It's the beginning. Of people naming names. Of the walls cracking. And of the whole tower, one day falling down. And just like that, she walked out.